Now we can go to, the meaning of the beast and the harlot. I will explain to you the mystery of the woman and the beast that carries her, and the beast with the 7 heads and the 7 horns. And I mentioned how the harlot is the woman, so the woman is the earth. And why is the earth all of a sudden being called a harlot? Well, simply because the earth has been, I don't want to really say what really harlot represents or means, but I would say that the earth has really been abused. So that pretty much explains it. Now I'll come to same chapter, verse 18. The woman whom you saw represents the great city that has sovereignty over the kings of the earth. Now it's saying that the woman represents a great city. Well, it's pretty simple. The great city is like the earth being the greatest. It's all the cities in the earth, and the whole earth is really the great city. So we'll find at the beginning again. That was like in chapter 3 maybe, where he mentioned the great city. I don't know if I have it highlighted here. I don't, but I have something highlighted here that I can go back, which I just mentioned. This is the sacred meaning of the 7 stars you saw in the right hand. Remember I mentioned the 7 stars? Out of 6, 2 will be fallen. And on the 7 gold lampstands, the 7 stars are the angels of the 7 churches, and the 7 lampstands are the 7 churches. Right there is telling you all of these 7 different things are part of the same thing, the seven measures of time. The lampstands is pretty simple. A lampstand produces light because it's a lamp, and there's 7 of them. So we definitely have light in our earth all the time. Okay, I wanted to find the great city, where it talks about the great city. Anyway, it does mention it somewhere at the beginning. But anyway, okay, let me go back. Bear with me. Okay. Chapter 16, the 7 bowls. And I'll be explaining that later, what the 7 bowls represent. But on verse 17, 18. Okay, it's part of verse 18. I won't read the whole thing. I'll just start where it says, "It was such a violent earthquake that there has never been one like it since the human race began on earth. The great city was split into 3 parts, and the Gentile city fell. I won't go into the Gentile city explaining that, but just reading that it was split into three parts. It's talking again. We said the great city is also the earth. So the earth is split into three parts, but not literally like with an earthquake. The earthquake simply represents, because we're talking, the seven bowls is already part of like getting close to the rapture, getting close to that time. So that's why it's mentioned in earthquake that man has never seen in all the time on earth, simply because it's not necessarily an earthquake, a realistic earthquake that happens in the earth, but it's a separation. So it's talking about the separation of the 6,000 to the new one, which is the seventh. Okay? That's why it's saying split it into three parts. Just like when we read about the woman dressed in purple, scarlet, and white, the dress, the bride, like the bride with gems, with precious gems and gold and dressed like a bride in white. That Old Testament, scarlet, and the seventh. Okay, so when he's saying here, split it into three parts, it's basically the same thing. The Old Testament, the New Testament, and finally, the kingdom of God, the seventh. So, hopefully, you get it. Explaining the woman represents the earth, and the scarlet and the beast are the same, but the scarlet, because of those keywords, is talking about like two heads. If we go to chapter 18, the fall of Babylon, we will find a lot of stuff there where it mentions the gender of humans, she, her for female. So depart from her, a widow, and it also mentions Babylon, mighty city, which is kind of like the great city. Alice, great city, which is like the great city. And here is where John is writing about more about some to do with the destruction of the earth, which most people think is like the end of the world, but it's not really the end of the world. And I will get to that later on. I just want to clarify more places where it mentions she, her, the merchant. Okay, here's the merchants who dealt in these goods, who grew rich from her. Okay, the merchants have grown rich from, what did I mention a while ago? The abuse of the earth. Read this part and you can it's not all this part is not really hard to understand if you just focus the fact that the woman is earth, and it's talking about the people in this great city and all of us, but it's talking more about the punishment of the great. He's the judge. I'm just reading his word. I'm not passing judgment on anybody myself. But yeah, that's where you find a lot of she and her, and also in the book of Psalms, you find a lot of she and her. Who is this she and who is this her? Well, I just finished telling you. It represents Mother Earth, Mother Nature. Mother Nature, nature is part of the creation of God, and it is part of that perfection that He is. I would also like to just, before I end this segment, is just go back to Jesus Christ, whom he is part of this plan, and he came to proclaim the good news of the kingdom of God. And this kingdom of God is what has to come. It's taken 2,000 years so far, a little over the way we document time, which I will get into explaining a little bit of time later on also. In the matter of how we documented and how it had to have been documented before Christ. So that's what he comes to proclaim, and as you read, you can read in John and Matthew and Luke and Mark, the Gospel, and in the letters of John, the letters of Paul, the letters of Peter. You read some of that, and it pretty much tells you about the kingdom. The kingdom of God is coming. But I'm revealing the timeline to be able to identify that we're getting really close, people. That's my point that I want to make, and I will come back on another segment and see where I go from that point on. Okay? So I thank you. Have a nice day.